This is a demonstration of Cloudsoft AMP deploying an application using RightScale and SoftLayer with auto-scaling capabilities. Showing first our RightScale, then our SoftLayer accounts, noting both are empty. Moving back to the AMP UI, we will then deploy our application that has auto-scaling capabilities. Taking a quick look at the application that we just deployed, we have a React cluster for data persistence. Connected to that, we have a Tomcat cluster that is serving our test application. And lastly, we have a JMeter that's running within the application to apply a synthetic load. Looking in the Inspector tab, we can then find the React Node ID and search for it within our SoftLayer and our RightScale accounts to make sure that they're both being loaded. Now that we've seen the location present in both, we'll look under our Location Manager to make sure that in our AMP UI the specifications are correct. Now that we're sure that the AMP locations are correct, we'll head back to the main UI and wait for the app to finish spinning up. Moving over to SoftLayer, we will show that the nodes are still pending, and that's where AMP spends most of its time waiting for the node to install the software. Back on the AMP UI, we're going to check out our JMeter entity. As we see our JMeter start to provision, we will also see our React cluster and our Tomcat cluster spin up. Now that everything's up and running, we'll take a look at our auto-scaling policy attached to the web tier and see our cluster size. You'll see that we've set our lower bound metrics to 150 and our upward bound to 300, so it will down and upscale based on those. By searching within our web application, we can find the requests per second per node to ensure that our parameters are being maintained by our auto-scaling policies. Seeing that our requests per second per node are hovering around 174, that shows that it is not going past the upward or downward bounds of our metrics. Heading over to our main application, we'll just test it with the URL to make sure that it's running properly. We'll test it by entering a simple username and a message to make sure that it's responding. And voila, we're up and running. Now back in the AMP UI, we'll go ahead and pause the JMeter effector to stop the synthetic load on the cluster. This will trigger an auto-scaler policy to shrink down our cluster. As we see that effector begin to pause, we'll start to see warning signs appear. We can also track the requests per second per node and see them start to downsize. And also, our clusters will therefore begin to dissipate. Now that our load has lessened and we've dropped a node, let's make sure that our app is still working. We'll enter again in a username and a message. And although we downsized our node, you can see that our app is still working. We will now go back to the AMP UI and put in the stop effect and kill our application and make sure that everything has been removed from RightScale and also from SoftLayer. Checking back on our application, we'll go ahead and refresh and we'll see that it no longer works. Moving over to RightScale, we'll go ahead and check and make sure that none of the entities are up. Again, in our SoftLayer, once we refresh, nothing is there. Thank you for watching this demonstration of Cloudsoft AMP using RightScale and SoftLayer to show its auto-scaling capabilities.